Here is former Trump National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster today saying what Republican senators are so far afraid to say.
Do you think it is appropriate for the President of the United States to solicit foreign interference in our political process? Thank you.
Of course, no. No, it's absolutely not. And of course, what has to happen here is seeing our democracy play out, right? The separation of powers play out, and for the American people through the representatives and the representatives in Congress to make a judgment as to whether or not that happened. But I mean, to answer your question directly, of course, it's not appropriate.
Joining our discussion now is Norm Ornstein, congressional historian and resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, an all-round Washington wise man who has been advising policymakers in Washington for decades. And Rick Wilson is with us, a Republican strategist and a contributor to the Daily Beast. He is the author of Everything Trump Touches Dies. Rick, I can never quite get through the title without cracking a little bit. Norm, let me begin with you. We just saw H.R. McMaster do it. Wow, it looked easy when he did it.
And it is easy. This is black letter law and norms and built and baked into our political system. To watch Cory Gardner and before him Joni Ernst try not to even answer the simplest question here really shows the dilemma that they feel. And they felt for the last 2+ years. They have enabled Donald Trump. They have bowed to the way in which he has intimidated them with pressure, including from that base that is in their states. And they've sat through what we now see as a level of corruption that is unparalleled in our history. It's like you go into a house and there's a body, and suddenly in every room and under every table there's another one, and it's cascading, and it's going to get worse, and we're going to see people turning. Sondland now going to give a deposition despite what the Secretary of State said, the ambassador to the EU. More rats will leave the sinking ship, and it's going to change the dynamic here. Maybe moral cowards will get a little bit of spine, but not because they've become moral, only because their cowardice turns them in another direction.
Now, in contrast to H.R. McMaster, let's take a look at Mike Pence. And it's Von Hilliard who is just putting a very simple question to Mike Pence. Let's watch this struggle.
Were you ever aware, Mr. Vice President, that interest in the Bidens, that interest in investigating the Bidens was at least in part of the reason for aid to Ukraine being held up?
I never discussed the issue of the Bidens with President Zelensky.
But within the administration, were you ever aware of within the administration?
What I can tell you is that all of our discussions internally, between the president and our team, in our context, in my office with Ukraine, we're entirely focused on the broader issues of the lack of European support.
But you were aware of the interest.
Rick, the question was very simply, were you ever aware that the Bidens were part of the equation dealing with Ukraine and President Trump? And I think the real answer was my lawyers have not told me how to answer that question yet.
I think you're exactly right, Lawrence. I think that Mike Pence is in a very odd position right now. On the one hand, he's in this minefield where if he reveals anything that he knows, Trump's fury with him could lead to very, very bad consequences. If he lies about it, he's going to get dinged when the investigation grinds on, which, as you correctly point out, this is going to continue. And as Norm pointed out, this is going to continue. It's going to peel back more layers. There will be more moments where we discovered maybe Mike Pence was in the room. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he had these discussions. Maybe he didn't. But the paranoia and the fear and the constant sense that you're in the middle of a minefield with Donald Trump is going to lead all these people. They're going to all stonewall. They're going to all hold it back until the very last minute. But once that first mover starts taking the deals, and once that first mover decides they're going to get out the door and not be a part of the ship that's not only full of plague rats but on fire, headed into a volcano at the same time, they're going to make a decision that they have to, have some political survival imperatives are going to kick in at some point.
And Norm, Donald Trump is the very first president running for re-election who is actually facing polling on the question of his impeachment. We've never seen a president in an impeachment situation running for re-election. The other numbers in the Fox News poll are absolutely devastating to a president running for re-election, and they're getting overshadowed by impeachment numbers. Let's take a look at those. They show 3 Democrats with 10-point leads basically on Donald Trump. Joe Biden leads Donald Trump in the Fox News poll 50-40. Elizabeth Warren, exactly the same result, 50-40, 10 points ahead of the incumbent President Bernie Sanders, 9 points ahead there at 49-40. Those would be big headline polling numbers if we didn't have a bigger headline polling number in the impeachment number.
I'd like to see them ask the question of whether a potted plant would do well against Donald Trump. I think it'd be 50-40 as well. But, you know, one of the things that's so interesting here is Trump defines fake news as anything that's bad about him. And now all of a sudden Fox News is purveying fake news, and he's going after his allies as well. And those allies are going to start to behave in a different fashion when, as Rick said, the layers are peeled off even a little bit more. It's astonishing to me that we haven't seen a little more of that. And, you know, we have the people up for re-election who are scared to death, the deers in the headlights. But you look at a Lamar Alexander who's retiring, who still will not come out for impeachment. And it shows you the level of cult-like behavior in the party, and it's going to take a while.
But Rick, part of that is for some of the Republican senators, they now know that the House of Representatives is going to send them this case. It's coming their way. They could encourage the House or not. It's not going to matter. The Democrats are going to vote articles of impeachment, send them over to the Senate. So those Republican senators have time to think about this as it comes at them.
They do have time, and they're all sweating it very, very heavily right now. And this is why they're issuing statements. For instance, on the question in Syria right now, these anodyne statements saying, "Oh, well, I oppose the administration's position." They're trying to start to establish a little bit of daylight here and there without mentioning Donald Trump by name, because they're not going to find their courage until after their filing deadlines in their respective states. So I think that the danger here is that they know this is coming from the House. They also know that every presidential referendum election is a referendum on the incumbent. This is the question of the incumbent referendum, and they're going to be judged on this.
Rick Wilson, Norm Ornstein, thank you both very much for joining us tonight. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.